Hi, I'm Pippa from Craft Pixie, and this is a companion video for the gift box coasters. So this is the hot pad and the cup coaster, and I'm going to show you how to do the border, talk about doing the bow, and also discuss about the backing. So let's go. I thought I'd start by talking about the types of yarn to use. As this is probably going to have hot things put on it, or you're going to handle hot things, you need a natural yarn. Now here's an example. This is my Naturals Organic Cotton. This is actually DK. In the pattern I've used Rico Aran, but you can use whatever you like. On the back it recommends a 4mm. You can actually use whatever you like. In the pattern example, the Aran, I would usually use a 5mm, but I've gone back down to a 4mm just to sort of bring the pattern together. But in these examples I'm going to do here, I'm using this and a 4mm, so it really doesn't matter, it's your preference. Then I'd like to show you what I mean by the wadding. This is what I mean by a low loft heirloom wadding. It's almost like a blanket. It just makes things so much easier to deal with. If you've got that sort of puffy wadding, it's really hard to work with if you've ever tried it. So I recommend something like this is perfect. Okay, let's get on with the make. So I've completed the hot pad, the body of it. I haven't blocked it. I mean, you can block it at this stage if you want. It's entirely up to you. I've knotted the ends together in pairs and I've cut them back. Now this cotton is slightly frayy. You might find this with some of your yarns, but it's fine. It will all be covered with the border. So talking of the border, I'm going to be working around the posts of these last rows. Where you work is entirely up to you, but I'm going to work just so that this line here is on the inside. And the next question is always, where is that corner? We are going to be working down here, down to the inside of the border stitches along the fringed edge. So if we work backwards, there's a stitch there, a last stitch. So I'll be making my last front post along this edge in this one here. I'm going to join the yarn a little way back from the corner. I'm going to pull through a loop, chain one to secure, and then I'm going to work a front post single crochet into the same space. And I'm going to work my front post single crochets to the corner. So when I reach the corner, I'm going to chain one, rotate the work by 90 degrees, and then work along this edge, working to the inside of the border stitches. Effectively, you're working across the rows. And before I continue, I'm going to put a stitch marker in that chain one so I don't lose it later on. When you're working down this edge, try and keep these edges out, these fringes out. If they do get caught in, don't worry, because you can pull them out afterwards. When you get to this textured part, it's a little bit more difficult to see the holes. So again, pull on the tails to see where you're going, and just work across. And you want the same number of stitches this side as this side. And the same when you do these edges, you're aiming for the same number of stitches. But really don't worry about it, because I've got some hints and tips that I'll show you later if you find that it doesn't exactly match up. I've now reached the next corner, and I'm going to use the same principle as before. So I have decided I'm working slightly on the inside, or the outside I should say, of this green line. So this is on the inside, and I've worked back, which means I've just worked my last stitch on this side, and now I'm going to do my chain 1, turn, and now I'm going to work back along this side. Not forgetting to put my stitch marker. I'm just going to work all the way around and come back and show you how I do my join here. This is how I like to join. You can join in whichever way you like. This is just my preferred option. I pull up a loop, take the hook out, and then I push my hook under the loops from back to front of that very first stitch, and then I pull the loop through, and I think that provides a nice join. For round 2 and any subsequent rounds, I'm going to chain 1, then I'm going to do a single crochet but through both loops, and I'm going to single crochet to my marked chain 1 space, and in my chain 1 space I'm going to work 2 single crochet, chain 1, 2 single crochet, and I'm going to move this stitch marker up to mark the chain 1 space again. I'm going to work all the way round, make my join as before, work another round, and then fasten off. I have completed the front flap and I've joined my yarn, and I'm not going to worry too much because these ends will be incorporated into the border, but I'm just going to darn them in and knot them together with the starting yarn. Now we're ready for the other side. So just going to flip it over, and I'm going to start on a non-fringed edge again. So I'm going to join it a little away from the corner just like before, but I'm going to be working around the posts where we worked before on the front. Pull a loop through, chain 1, front post single crochet into the same place, and then front post single crochet along to the corner. When I get to the corner, I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to chain 1, turn, and I'm going to work back along. Going to mark my chain 1, working around those stitches. Now can you see one of these ends has got themselves caught in? You just pull them out. So let's have a look and see what it looks like on the other side. Should be able to see that reinforcing running stitch happening just here. You want that to stay neat, so keep flipping it over and looking as you go. So you're going to work round exactly as you did on the front, but working around those posts with your chain 1 and marking your chain 1 in the corner, joining your 2 rows, but when you get to the end, don't cut the yarn off. Just wait and I'll show you how to do the join. I've reached the end and I've joined, and now I'm going to chain 1. We're going to be working into the inner loops of the 2 flaps. I'm going to count back from my corner. I'm going to work into the back loop of that one and the back loop on the other side, and I'm going to make a single crochet, and I'm going to do that all the way along. If you find these don't match up, take one from that side and work into the stitch you've just worked into, or vice versa, depends on whether your front is lacking a stitch or the back is lacking a stitch. When it comes to the fringing, just stroke them inside as you go. Any odd ends, they'll all be incorporated into the channel. Just continue round, join as you want to join, and fasten off to finish the border. So if you're finding this video useful, please like and comment, and it'd be really useful to me if you could consider subscribing to the channel as well. Here's my finished hot pad. You can see that working from the back to do this join makes it sit flat on the table, but my advice is when you're working from the back, always check the front to make sure you've gone right through that stitch, otherwise you will see that on the edge. Now we're going to talk about the bow. We want it to be above this piece here because this is like the ribbon on your parcel. The pattern asks you to mark the central stitch. I mean, just find it by eye. This is not particularly scientific. And then count back 12 from this. So between these 2 stitch markers, including these stitch markers, you will have 25 stitches. This will be your first stitch and this will be your last stitch. Once you've started this row, keep this central marker in because you're going to use that later. I'm just going to hold on to this stitch but take the marker out so I can actually work into it, and I'm going to work into the back loops. I'm going to single crochet all the way along into those back loops. So secure with a chain stitch, single crochet into the same stitch, and then work along to the other side with your single crochets in your back loop, including this marker, leaving this one in place. My bow's complete. Now it's just the case of sewing on the knot section. I've added a couple of extra rows. You can do as many rows as you feel you need to cover that, pull it in. You could actually crochet it onto here by starting into this last row. I just prefer to do it this way. I've got a little bit more control, I feel. And here's my finished hot pad. I did 2 more rows than the pattern says here, just to make it a little bit more relaxed. But here's a version where the bow's more cinched in, so it's up to you which version you prefer. Let's talk about lining it. On this one, you can see I've lined it into the recess that's formed by the border here. I've done that just by sandwiching some of the low loft heritage wadding inside a cotton bag. Now I would wash everything first before you do this, because the wadding, this cotton, may shrink slightly differently to this, so do that first. An alternative, if you don't want to do this extra border, is to just do the front edge and then line up to the absolute border. So as an example, let's look at the coaster. So I've finished the coaster, I've done the front flap. You can see all of the back is still left. I'm going to work from the back as if I'd finished the back flap as well, but I'm going to work from the back and I'm going to work into the front loops here. So effectively the back loop if you were looking at the front. So this is going to mimic that nice border that will allow the mat to lie flat. Now I'm going to make the bow, but I don't have any back loops to work into. I'm just going to work into the loops here. I've now made the bow. You can see it's attached just to the outside flap, not attached to this at all. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to measure . So I shall cut out the wadding and the lining and then attach it, whip stitch it onto the back. When I came to put the border on, I actually decided to go into this stitch here rather than this edge stitch. Just depends on the effect that you want on the front, entirely up to you. And here are the two different versions. One with the backing in that gap and one where you've just worked the front side and put the backing around, covering over the tails, tucking them in as you go.